Welcome to Alchemy with Bronwyn, a podcast dedicated to helping you live an inspired, heart-centered life by cultivating energetic mastery. We delve deep into how to organize our life force around what matters most. I'm your host, Bronwyn Ayla, board-certified acupuncturist, mama, dancer, and practitioner on the path of illumination. This is Bronwyn Ayla speaking at the summer solstice about the energy of the season and ways that we can harmonize with what's happening in nature. Often in the West, we think of summer solstice as the beginning of summer, but actually it's the beginning of the end of summer. This is the peak of summer when the days are the longest and the nights are the shortest. It's the peak of the rise of yang that began in the spring. It's actually the crescendo of yang. This is the time when yin is giving birth inside of yang. However, yin, because of its nature, presents internally rather than externally. In the winter time, yang is giving birth inside of yin. We celebrate this with all kinds of holidays and different traditions depending on the religion. However, it's rare to find a tradition that celebrates the birth of yin at summer solstice. But in the same way that we celebrate the coming of the light around winter solstice with Christmas and different traditions and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and traditions where there's lighting of candles to symbolize the coming of the light, we could be celebrating the coming of the dark in wintertime, a celebration of the yin aspect of slowing down, taking more time for internal reflection, and actually tuning into this part of the season. A lot of the information that I'm bringing with this seasonal harmonizing talks is coming from my teacher Lu Ming, and he would say that this is the most important talk to listen to. This is the one where if we don't observe this decline of yang and harmonize our energy with that, it can cause the most long-lasting and deep-seated disease. The reason yang's potential for harm is much greater than yin's is because yang, by nature, when it's very strong, is non-responsive. At this time of the year, we're asking yang to retire. But because its nature is non-responsive, there is a great potential for harm. Yin, on the other hand, its nature is responsiveness. So even when yin is dominant, such as in the winter time, if there's a small amount of yang applied, such as the days slowly getting brighter, yin responds to that and allows the change. An analogy would be a general who's won many battles in the late spring and early summer. And if their yang is not reined in around this time, they'll think, oh, now it's time for me to be emperor, and they'll kind of keep going because their yang is not retiring. And the way to get the young to retire would be to have them marry, give them some land, turn them into a farmer. But if the general is not able to transition into being a farmer, metaphorically, he'd have to have been killed as a reward for his service to the army. An out-of-control general is generally considered chaos, because military training is appropriate for battle, but it's not appropriate for running the government. We have this right now in our government, where there's that out-of-bound yang that's totally unequipped to run the government. There's not enough yin to anchor them, and so they try to create dictatorships. When a healthy yang is dominant, there's a sense that one can do anything. We can multitask, complete projects, invent new projects, reinvent ourselves, and there's a great sense of accomplishment and competence. So if this has been the case of cultivating yang in the spring, we might find ourselves having completed lots of projects or be really excited about new beginnings and change, and a sense that we can sort of do anything and get a lot of things done. The key here is to let that roll now rather than pushing the river. It's like it's already flowing from the spring. and the height of summer, but now it's just let it go. Don't keep the pushing of that yang. When yang is really intelligent, there's a quality of discerning instead of the oppositional yang that's characteristic of early spring. In early spring, we often have this energy of like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to change this. This aspect of my life isn't working. Let me see if I can move to a new place or find a new relationship, or this energy of movement and change is appropriate. It's like this rebellious teenager after a long winter of hunkering down and being internal that wants to now try something new. Yin and yang intelligence are quite different from each other, and they actually rely on each other. Whereas yin's intelligence is dreamy and spacey and belongs to ancestral realms. It's this wintry, dark, spiritual, visionary intelligence. At the end of the winter retreat time, if yin doesn't add a little yang to its energetic flow, it becomes a spacey, visionary, mumbling on and on about all of its spiritual blah blah blah, but it doesn't really have any yang to anchor that into change. However, here at summer solstice is when yang needs to respond to yin in this way. Yang needs to yin out. It needs to begin to sink down, be anchored by that yin, and let the yin slowly become dominant. This is such a literal metaphor for patriarchy. Patriarchy is out of control yang. It's that pushing, going, not listening, moving, conquering, raping, pillaging. All the symptoms of yang being out of control and not anchored by yin, by the feminine aspect of life. Lu Ming would often use the analogy of how in the wintertime the yin has become dominant and then at some point becomes senile, like a granny who's senile, and then yang takes her hand and helps her cross the road, like the young grandson helps senile granny make it through the day. And now at summer solstice, yang is big and yin is just growing. Yin is a young girl that's just growing up, and she needs to come and take her out of control grandfather home and let him relax and sit by the fire and watch his grandkids grow up. As yin is being birthed at summer solstice, it's a time where we can engage less of our disciplined and ambitious ways and these parts of ourselves, and more of a willingness to listen, hold, and tune in. The quality of yin is listening, and the quality of yang is more ambitious and disciplined and colder. This yang quality gets the job done, even if it means using force. This time of year, we don't need to be overly disciplined to get the job done and to run our lives. There's a way where we can tap into our willingness to be open-minded, listen, and allow the flow of the river to happen without pushing it. At this time, yin and yang are at a pivotal moment, a pivotal shift, and as a result of this dynamic force, a wind is born around summer solstice. This wind is a culmination of yang. At this time of year, that wind enters into the plants and the fruit trees and makes them ripen. The wind gains yin over time and eventually damp in the autumn, but right now it's a sharp, pathogenic wind. It's also the wind that helps the birds migrate. For many birds, their sensitivity to this wind is their intelligence. When they feel a shift in this wind after the summer solstice, that's when they begin to migrate, and they use that wind to carry them to the south. This meeting of yin and yang, or this pivoting of yin and yang at this time of year that causes this wind, is allegorical to the meeting of the ocean and the land, this deep yin body of water with the more yang land. In ancient China, people didn't really hang out on the beach or go to beach resorts because it was considered pathogenic to absorb this wind and that hot yang of the beach. They would maybe take walks there, but not live there. A more balanced place to live is where a lake meets a mountain. This was considered angelic compared to an ocean meeting the land.
You can support
This podcast and the work that I do with a monthly membership starting with as little as $3 a month. Higher subscription rates give you live weekly calls with me, which include video content. The biggest reason to support this work is so I can continue to make this transformative content for people everywhere in a sustainable way. Please go to bronwyn.love to find out about support options. That's BRONWYN.love. As far as exercise goes, because yin is a fragile newborn at summer solstice, it's important to not exert yourself too much this time of year. If we exercise to the point of profuse sweating, we lose the little yin that is here, and later this can lead to bigger problems with our immune system. Working very hard after the summer solstice can exhaust that tiny little infantile yin. As far as conduct goes, the biggest counsel is to calm down and re-strategize. If we don't, we end up with struggle and aggression, ambition and pushing. The image we can see in nature is rotting before ripening. The things we struggle with, we struggle to protect or to grow or to keep our ambition up, start to rot before they actually come to fruition. As far as a yearly plan, it's better to get our yayas out, as my daughter calls them, in late spring and early summer, such as during spring break. To go and have a big wild time at spring break is way more appropriate than at the end of summer. Being wild in the spring helps us sort out our young. However, after summer solstice, being aggressive is no longer useful. This is not a Judeo-Christian morality conversation. It's conduct recommendation to attune to the flow of energy happening and the cycles happening on the earth. But now the counsel is to really rein in the immature young behavior. In modern life, we are quite reluctant to slow down on the young, spring, moving, pushing energy. After summer solstice, we have July 4th, where we light fireworks and barbecue and further emphasize the young, fire, heat aspect of life. And for many of us, in the West Coast at least, after summer solstice in late August, we have Burning Man. It's really difficult to get more young than lighting things on fire and parading around in the desert, half naked. Or if we take something like red meat, which is already, its thermal nature is quite hot, and then we roast it on a barbecue in the middle of the heat of the afternoon, and then stay up and watch fireworks, we might end up with constitutionally more struggle and aggression, which again, circling back to the patriarchy conversation, is really the struggle that we're having worldwide. Right now is the time when the young, out-of-bound nature could hang out with little girls and discover what it means to be a grandpa, what it means to nurture and hold and observe. We don't want grandpa to be stressed out. We want him to think that it's time to retire. So it's like where the general or the emperor is distracted by his granddaughter from war. Healthy young at this time has a confidence that it's time to simply let all of that go, to relax, to allow yin to flourish, to eat steamed fish and drink tea rather than barbecue heavy red meats and drink beer. So even though this misconduct has been normalized in the West, in Chinese medicine we would think of this as quite catastrophic. In modern life we push, and the result is this empty yin, and then later in the winter having more febrile diseases and fevers. As I often remind my patients, what is normal doesn't necessarily mean that that's healthy. Part of this change of conduct at this time of year includes revising strategies. Instead of trying to finish up all the tasks and do a final push, just take some time to slowly let it all unfold. If you have projects that aren't complete from the spring, let them just kind of drift on and slowly come to completion. Modern young out of balance looks like violence and aggression, patriarchy and a lack of acuity and intelligence, but yang is not necessarily all muscle. Part of yang's power is being accurate and precise. When yang is healthy, this precision makes for more of strategists than violent generals. So a healthy yang, when yin starts to come back in the autumn, a healthy yang is able to use this focus and this precision to go inside and pay attention and connect to the inner world. It shifts its focus from all the activities of spring and summer to focus on the inner world. In the wintertime, we don't want to provoke yang. We need to protect it and keep it warm throughout the winter. For those of you that are practitioners out there of any kind of medicine, often in the autumn and the winter, we have people coming to us telling us that they feel low energy, that they're tired, that they don't want to go out. And if we give them herbs or acupuncture to help them feel better and have more energy, we actually could be provoking the yang. So they'll start to feel more motivated, they'll feel vigorous, but we're actually discharging their yang at that time of year. So at this time of year, at the summer solstice, it's the peak of yang and includes the first step of decline. It's this time to start to rein in our yang and our movement and our doing. This is certainly not a good time to be competitive with others. Expressing feelings is certainly an important part of this time of year, but expressing your emotions means more like going for a walk or writing some poetry, not yelling at your partner. So we allow ourselves to experience things directly, but not making them into a huge drama. It's more about taking time to look at the sunset, playing music, and reading books of poetry. So emotional things are looking at the sunset, being proud of your daughter, more calm, quiet, emotional health. This can often be the snap-off point for relationships that have become too young. So this could look like expecting too much from the other person. This is a kind of yang dis-ease when we want someone to be more than they are. It would be healthier to stop looking outside and to turn our attention inward. What could be happening this time of year is a rejuvenation of our own inner resource and essence. It's not about our partner, it's about ourself. So symptomatic of yang out of bounds would be more of a I'm being competitive and I'm unique and I want to win at all this stuff and maybe my partner's holding me back and so I have to move on. This is a disease where we're imagining that winning has some kind of ultimate meaning. This is yang going crazy. When yang is at full maturity, which it is at summer solstice, it could be wise, and the yang wisdom is not only about getting things done. When the general we've been talking about comes home from war and meets his granddaughter, he shifts his energy from wanting to be in battle to wanting to create a world that's safe and beautiful for his granddaughter. It shifts from, as Lu Ming would say, from building rocket ships to wanting to create cute little doll houses for the granddaughter. So it's a time to express our feelings articulately. This is different than going to ecstatic dance and flailing around in a state of ecstasy. It's more about telling the people close to you that you love them and that they're important to you. It's not a let's stay up all night, we need to talk. It's more appropriate to do that inside yourself. Talk to yourself all night if you want to do that. And then with whatever it is that you discover, articulate that to your loved ones. This is also a really great time to give people gifts, especially giving gifts of ripe fruit. You can give these to your friends and the people you love, but it can also be a good time to give gifts to people that you have a more difficult time with. If we work on our most difficult relationships this time of year, the other ones become easier. And gift giving with difficult relationships can be a way to harmonize the energy. Work out some way of articulating all of the feelings that have been latent in your system. All times of year is a great time to be outside and in nature. This time of year is no different. Spending time in nature can help cultivate our yin. But this is less about going to the beach and lying half naked in the sun. The wind over the next 2 chi nodes, which is about a month, is toxic and penetrating. This yin deficient yang wind is dangerous. If we're going to be outside, wear long sleeves, wear a hat, stay out of direct sunlight for too long, because this wind can pierce us and create a stuck quality, which is what we want to avoid. We need to make sure that our inner yang does not get stuck. This is what we're trying to protect. So on very sunny days, think twice about how to participate in the season. If for some reason the yang does get stuck, we want to make sure to get this out before the winter time comes. One amazing way to get the yang to retire and chill out is to go on vacation this time of year. This can be very disorienting to our productive, ambitious, get things done mode. We have a chance when we go away to go away from our patterns. Like, for example, we could go somewhere we don't speak the language, and so our discerning, knowing, needing to understand mind can take a break. It could be a good idea to go somewhere and be really unimportant. Like, no one in that little town off of the coast of wherever it is cares that you're an important person where you're coming from. They don't know who you are, and they don't really care. And they're just there doing their fishing or whatever it is. So we have a chance to go somewhere and realize that there's more to life than all of the things that we have become wrapped up in our day-to-day. The yin rising and the yang declining, this process has the potential to give us a certain kind of profound wisdom. Go away for a while from your work and discover when you come back that you're actually quite good at what you do. For example, when we're gobbling data and getting knowledge, we are a student. So going away for a while allows us to be more in our experience and actually let that data transform into a softer wisdom. Foods that can help our yang retire are the juicy yin-filled foods, such as melons and juicy ripe fruit, and watery dishes and soup. It's better to eat during the daytime and not at nighttime, definitely not when it's dark. Eat less meat and protein. The farmer's market is so abundant this time of year. Everything is juicy and ripe, less rich, but more abundant, splendid, sweet and sour tastes. And a little bit of this tells your yang what to do. All of the plants related to longevity are not only sweet, but sweet and sour. With sweet and sour, the spleen and the liver are involved. So peaches and plums, apricots and nectarines, cherries, all of these fruits that are kind of have a tartness. And not incidentally, we want this longevity not so we can simply be old, but so that we can ripen as a person. So this process of ripening in the summertime is really reflective of our process of wanting to ripen as a person. Often in my practice, I like to remind my patients that what we're doing here isn't simply fixing their shoulder or getting them healthy so that if they did a bunch of tests and EKGs and whatever, their levels would come out good, whatever that relative thing is. But health really is about being a loving person and having longevity so we can live long enough so we have time to develop as a person and become wise. So there's ways of protecting ourselves from our constitution by our conduct. For example, if your constitution is young, modern life with all of our technology and cell phones and just crazy politics and all of it puts us at great risk for heart disease. If our constitution is more yin, we tend towards cancer and rotting in an effort to get young going all the time when actually we're tired. So there's more of a smoldering heat leading to this yin deficiency. So on that note, this is the time of year to let yang decline to protect us from these tendencies. So at the farmer's market, what we see here, all of these juicy fruits are items that are not really that good for storage. They're more things that we want to eat now. They're vigorous, but they're not appropriate to eat later on. Yang is maximized, and our spleen is strong that we can take out all the nutrients that is offered to it. So everything now needs to be eaten fresh, and it's not until later in the year that we see things that want to be stored. So right now we have summer squash, we want to eat that now. Everything starts to lose its moisture later on. But right now, the juices that things have are created straight from the sunlight. Later on, when we start storing food, it's more appropriate for nourishing the yin. So we're just starting to see the turn of the cycle where we're heading towards foods that can be stored and then used in the wintertime to really more strongly nourish that yin quality. Another piece of counsel that Lu Ming used to give is to graze rather than eat big meals. If we're healthy, our assimilation right now is at its peak. So this ripeness of summer we want to store in the body as a chi pattern for the rest of the year. Not as nutrients, but as a chi pattern. This time of year, a large supper is really detrimental. Save eating larger meals for the early part of the day when the chi is higher. Let the food not be complicated, but just simple soups, like a salty juk or rice soup with a little bit of bok choy in it. We want a savory liquid, but not a liquid that's very rich. Lightly cooked foods that are blanched are more harmonious for inviting yang to retire than things that are fried or barbecued. Having, for example, a gluten-free soba in a broth, a salty broth, could be a nice simple way to harmonize with the season. You can do dry frying in the wok, or what is called water frying. Using the water will help the food get blanched. So it's a kind of a stir fry with only water, a water frying. You can do this with something fresh like pea shoots or snow pea leaves. Okay, so circling back to this ripening conversation, Lu Ming would say that blossoming is the splendor of spring, where ripening is the splendor of summer. Ripening is when food is the most delicious and digestible. But if we don't pick the fruit this time of year, then it begins to rot. Plants do this to discharge their seed. In the autumn time, they want the fruit to start to rot so that it can discharge the seed and become a compost for that seed to grow into another tree. This is how it survives. Immature yang is the flower that leads to the fruit that then leads to the seed. And then when pit fruit matures, that fruit part starts to rot. And that way it can compost itself and have something nutritious for the seed to sprout from. So the expression of yin that comes out of the tree is this compost to feed the seed. This is the nourishment that the fruit tree will give to the next fruit tree. So right now we're at the peak of ripeness, and after summer solstice it begins to have a tendency towards rotting. So as we know, if we have a stone fruit such as a peach or a nectarine that's not all the way ripe, we can chew it really well, as this will allow it to be more digestible, and actually is a sort of ripening for that fruit for our bodies. Our saliva begins to break down that food and prepare it to hit the stomach acid. So all of the ripening plants have abundant juiciness this time of year, and it's important not to eat rotten food. So we don't want to eat anything that's overripe, that watermelon that's been sitting around just a little bit too long. Often we use these ripe fruits as offerings on our altars, but we want to make sure to check the altar several times a day so that there's not a situation of mold or rotting on the altar. This would be very inauspicious and create imbalance in the situation. It can make yang aggressive, actually, because yin rotten foods means that yang has gone up, and this is pathogenic yang. Fertility can be enhanced by eating ripe foods such as cucumbers, melons, etc., because it encourages the kind of yin and yang synthesis. We don't think of this often, but being in a hurry is a way to create infertility. I see this often with women who come to see me in my practice who are struggling with infertility, and they're the CEO executives running around juggling multiple stressful situations. They're often late to their appointment, they have to leave at a certain time right after, their phone is close at hand while they're on the table. All of this kind of yang derangement can lead to an infertility. When yang is out of control, there's a kind of dominance of looking for more energy and aggression and individuality and uniqueness but that's not really how we produce. Fertility is actually about being in the whole cycle of the year, not only glorifying young and then in the wintertime going on vacation in a warm, hot place like Mexico or Ibiza. In the wintertime, we need to hunker down and be in solitude and quiet and the depths of winter as a way to repay that young time of the year of the summer. Thus, we recognize birth as part of an ongoing cycle. So these ripe fruits encourage fertility because they harmonize yin and yang. Okay, so moving on to rituals and celebrations this time of year, we want to honor emotions and celebrate them, but not in a way where we have like an operatic drama of the emotions. Healthy rituals could include planting trees and flowers and celebrating the positive influences of this time. These are all rituals trying to get young to calm down. And another great way to do this is by honoring our ancestors. One way you can do this is to go to tombs of ancestors, sweep away the muck and put flowers on the graves, give gifts to different family members that may be estranged. It's actually giving gifts to honor the ancestors and your similar lineages. Hold big banquets and make offerings in the 4 directions, and also that of the 4 directions representing the living, the dead, the enemy, and the ally. Because of the abundance of this time of year, there's no real difference between enemy and ally, living and dead. We're just celebrating all that is abundant on the earth. As we talked about earlier, things that are appropriate for the altar are things related to longevity, like ripe fruit. You can also use things that represent the turtle or tortoises. These are all representing the cycles of time and the yin, especially the tortoises and turtles that live in the ocean, because these have a direct yin quality. In ancient China, the emperor would put on display this time of year tortoise shells that had lived thousands of years. And these rituals are all there to calibrate everyone, to get everyone to calibrate with the seasons. For farmers, this time of year is often more calmer because the crops have been planted and they're waiting for the autumn harvest. So for this reason, gatherings are appropriate because there's actually time to have the gatherings. Dress can be in full splendor and beautiful clothing. It's appropriate to dress up to celebrate the height of young. So if you're going to have summer solstice gatherings, have them in full regalia and fancy dress. Okay, so another thing to tune into this time of year is loyalty. Loyalty is clearly one of the emotions of being human, and the point of the experience of loyalty isn't to find someone or something to be loyal to, but to simply practice the invocation of loyalty into one's system. So we can find someone to be loyal to and celebrate this, but ultimately the point of loyalty is simply to have an experience of loyalty. Loyalty actually is a healthy attribute of yang. It's not the kind of loyalty where we kill everyone who's not loyal. It's more of an invocation of the sense of loyalty that represents a healthy yang energy. There becomes a respect of other people's loyalty, whether it's to religions that are not our own or to a government that we don't agree with, but there's a respect of loyalty just as a way of invoking loyalty itself. The day cycle's height of energy is at noon, as you can imagine, because that's when the sun is at its highest. That's the best time to do our practices. So when we wake up, we face the south. You can imagine that the inhale is coming from the south over the horizon. It's not a time where we want to do too much qigong. It's more little bits throughout the day, the same way we would be grazing food slowly throughout the day, also doing our practices a little bit all day long. This is not a time of year to do it more and do it harder or do a yoga workout and get athletic. This is more a time to slowly practice and cultivate qi throughout the day. If you're an acupuncturist or a medical provider, right now patients get better very easily because the yang is at its height. When patients come in complaining of various things, almost any treatment we do and they'll get better. Pulses often feel very healthy because the channel chi is strong. It's because digestion is strong. Foods are easily assimilated. This assimilation of the nutrients produces strong blood, and that blood helps to nourish the channels. At the solstices and equinoxes, we shift our medical treatments. It's important not to tonify yang this time of year. Even if people come in and it looks like they're yang deficient, rather than tonifying yang, we want to tonify their spleen chi. Even a chi deficient person can get enough from vegetables and fruit this time of year because of their ripeness. Similarly, people who come in might have a lot of catharsis on the table, a lot of needing to express emotions and let go of things. This is healthy. You might recommend that they do things to enhance this letting go and feeling of emotions. Ideas could be reading books of poetry, spending time in nature, reading sad stories. All of this is very healthy. As far as our conduct with children, it's also important to give space for their expression of emotions. So this time of year, you might notice your kids having more outbursts, more tantrums, more letting go of pent-up emotions. It's important to give them the space and time to do this. Hold them, show understanding, let them cry in a loving container. Help them to know that their wild expression of their emotions is welcome, and that all the different kinds of emotions are welcome in your family. Demonstrate to them how having a wide range of feelings can be a safe experience for them. This is important all times of year, but especially important now. In addition, if you notice your children being competitive or starting to want to have a lot of comparisons, my counsel would be to guide them into another way of play. Find games that are more based on collaboration. The competitive edge this time of year can get quite ugly and can actually be harmful to the chi. Thank you for listening to this podcast. You can find out more about how to attune to the seasons on my website at www.bronwynayla.com. That's BRONWYNAYLA.com. Please take care and go gently in the world. Thank you for tuning in to Alchemy with Bronwyn, this podcast which is dedicated to helping you live an inspired, heart-centered life by cultivating energetic mastery. We delve deep into how to organize our life force around what matters most. Send me a message. You can do that in the show notes. You'll see a link. Let me know how it went for you. Also, please remember to hit the like button, support button, all the rest of it. And you can support me to make more great content for people everywhere at bronwyn.love. That's BRONWYN.love. All those links are in your show notes. Many blessings, and I hope to tune in with you again soon.